Last week, Paul covered courage, right? This week, we're talking about discourage. To be discouraged. And one of my favorite cartoons, who always seems to be discouraged, well, there's two of them, I'm going to show you the other one in a little bit, is Charlie Brown. And so I was hoping it would be big enough. You know, Charlie Brown, what kind of character is he? How would you describe Charlie Brown? Defeated. I would call him a punching bag. Defeated's a good word. Anybody else? Well, how would you characterize Karen? A downer. A downer, he's usually pushed down a lot, especially from Peppermint Patty, Lucy, right? So I just picked one, and they're all yelling at him, and he's just pushed down. And we're going to cover that a little bit tonight about what they've done to him. Okay? So how would you define discouragement? How would you define discouragement? Hopelessness. Okay. Anybody else? Somebody read the book? Beaten down. Someone else read the book? A downer. Okay. Yeah. Discouragement. We all have different. When you hear the word discouragement, you think of it differently. You may have personal experience with being discouraged, right? You may have had to be a strength for someone who has been discouraged to try and lift them up, right? Does it happen to everybody? Does everybody get discouraged from time to time, whether it's a little thing? Even the strongest person could be discouraged, right? No, we're told we're not perfect. Absolutely. It is. So here's my other favorite. I'm a Winnie the Pooh fan. And this is Eeyore, right? What's his personality like? Depressed all the time, right? It seems like he wallers in it. He just wallers in depression. But he enjoys it, to be honest. Have you guys ever seen any of the latest movies of Winnie the Pooh? Right, where Christopher Robinson's all grown up, and Eeyore's just, he's part of the really low humor in the movie. It's just really dry humor. It's that British humor. Anyway, he just gets kicked around. He doesn't look for anything positive at all, usually. But those negative things usually make you smile. He's an example of someone who seems to be hopeless, right? In the characters. What are things that make you, how would you define hopelessness? Dan, you said hopeless. How would you define hopeless? And it doesn't have to be an exact definition. It could just be an example. What would be a good example of hopelessness?
They're in a cloud of their storm, and all they can focus on is the storm of the cloud. They can't see the silver lining.
Yeah, they just wallow in it, right? That's why I used Eeyore.
If they don't look further out.
A feeling of helplessness, maybe?
Helplessness, yep. That's a good synonym for hopelessness, right? Let's see. Why is hopelessness a mistaken belief? Why is hopelessness a mistaken belief? Dan touched base on it a little bit. Oh, because he said silver lining? No, because he can't see the silver lining. I'm going to give you a sneak peek at the next slide. This is a guy with blinders on. It's that concept. You get buried I'm going to go back to Eeyore. Well, no, we'll just go on to him. You get so involved about yourself, and it's a negative thing, although being self-centered is not a good thing either, but you're so focused on all the negativity, you put blinders on, and you can't see the good that's around you. You get buried in this negativity. And how do you deal with that when you're in those situations? Anybody?
With outside praying or reading our Bible, praying helps a lot.
Yes, praying, reading our Bible. We're going to cover that a little bit in just a little bit. How have you dealt with it yourselves?
Exercise.
Exercise, it's coming from a Marine.
It does help, it really does help.
Okay,
Try to do something for someone else.
that's good. Yeah, trying to do something for someone else lifts you up as well as encourages them. Okay, why are discouraged people quicker to internalize criticism than praise? If you're trying to pick someone up, are they right there ready to take that appreciation, that praise, that grace, if they're really discouraged?
Would they have a kind of low self-esteem if they're discouraged?
Yeah, they would have a low self-esteem. They would just focus on themselves in a negative way, and it drag them down even further, right? Dan?
People who are depressed or downhearted, they like to flock with the birds of the same feather. So they don't try to pick anybody else up. They subconsciously will get someone else down so they can be with somebody at the same time.
Yeah, so that it makes them feel a little better when they're holding people back. One of my favorite sayings, you can't fly like an eagle if you hang around with a bunch of turkeys, right? You got to try to rise above the low parts in your life.
I think too that if someone's really discouraged, that everything they have coming into them, like you're trying to give them praise, it all gets filtered through that discouragement. And so sometimes all that's left, they just don't take in that praise because the discouragement is so thick, you can't get through.
Yeah, that's the blinders that I was trying to give you an example of. You just bury yourselves in this shroud of darkness, right? You think nobody appreciates you, and you just start going downhill from there.
And Satan feeds it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, especially the friends that Dan hangs up with. Okay, why are trials more devastating to people when they are discouraged? They have a negative attitude, and it's hard to get out of that, right? Okay, discouragement can lead to depression, would you say? It's that pounding, or you pile things on top. Depression can lead to a lack of confidence, to where you don't know how to get out. You don't feel confident in yourself to accomplish anything, to move forward. And it also hinders your ability to handle the given situation altogether, because you pretty much get to a point, or you could get to a point where you just give up.
Feel like you just can't do anything.
Right, and you can't please anyone. But in reality, most of us have our friends around us, don't we? We have our family, we have our church family. In Eeyore's case, he always has his family, Christopher and all the other pets, right? Or their dolls. Okay? The courageous person, on the other hand, can accept what they're dealing with without limitations. They're able to pile it on and shrug it off. They just move forward, right? If you have different personalities. Some people, like what Dan was saying, they just like it down low and they want to drag people down there with them. But then you have other people who are naturally uplifting. They are encouragers. How many people have gotten a phone call from someone from church this week from one of those encouragers, right? You'd be surprised just what a little phone call or a little card. We've got those cards that we fill out. Those are encouragements, right? Just small things. But we know our family, our church family is here for us as well. Think of some common discouragements in your life. Now, these are in the church, these things happen in the church: divorce, definitely death. These are things that can drag you down, right? And dealing with them, especially if you have a death after a death, like we've had one church member who's had a few deaths this year, right? And I'm talking about Annette. If you don't have a positive personality or surround yourself with people who encourage you, you could just shrink down, right? But when you see Annette, she's just all full of energy, isn't she? That's encouraging to me. Penny?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, that's obviously those are really big things. But sometimes it's a bunch of little things that can get us discouraged. I know I get discouraged when I feel really behind. If I feel like I'm behind at work, I'm behind at home, and I'm not doing enough at church, and then it's just like boom, 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 and then, okay, now I'm for a little bit of a funk. Because
A funk's a good word.
So sometimes it's those little things that pile up on us. I think more often than the enormous things that can really fix.
Right, and we all have different levels or different things that can set us off or push us down or bring us up, right? Think to yourself, you don't have to share unless you want to, what are some things that drag you down? I know from talking with Penny exactly what she's talking about because we were talking about it on our way here. Dan?
Overtime.
Overtime. Oh, you get paid for overtime.
Takes away family life.
Yeah. So I could see that being a negative, something that would discourage you, at least discourage you from wanting to do the overtime.
Things don't get done that need getting done because you don't have time.
Is that a build off of what Dan's saying? Donna was saying that things don't get done that you need to get done because you're giving your time to something else, right? So that could be discouraging. Anybody else?
Health problems.
What?
Health problems.
Health problems. Health problems can get you down. Who said something over here?
Personal failures, things that you think about that you should have accomplished and never did.
We'll come back to that one. Health problems, right? Me, I'm dealing with, I have a plugged eye duct. That's why I wasn't here last Wednesday and I wasn't here Sunday morning. They put a stent in. I'm freaking out, right? But if I had gotten sick when they were doing the stent, like, a lot of places you go in for a simple doctor's visit, they come out with COVID, right? That freaks people out. That could be a downer. Or if it's, I already mentioned death, but health, what were you thinking in health?
Well, I've got a few health concerns. I've lost most of my vision on my left eye. I lose both eyes. That's a serious concern.
Yeah, because then you're like, okay, what do I do to support my family, right? Speaking from a guy's perspective.
Chronic illness that just you can't ever get over.
Yeah.
That just keeps going on.
So, Dan, what was yours again?
Not personal failures of not accomplishing your needs where I thought I'd be or something like that.
Yeah, not getting that promotion at work, not completing a job in time. If you're in my world, if I don't complete a job on time, I don't get paid and I get criticized. Now, a lot of times I can just put a little piece of paper in, they'll give me more time. But yeah, if you're not accomplishing your personal goals, that can be discouraging to you. Anybody else?
Well, just goals, but just dreams or what you thought you would do with your life. But life gets in the way, especially if you have a family.
Yes.
Everybody else.
We don't get to stay 20 all of our lives, do we? No, no. And as soon as you have one kid, then you have another kid. Next thing you know, they're grown up and they're in high school and wanting to date, right? That's just very discouraging. Then they want to get engaged to be married, and then they're married, and then you're empty nesters, right? And then you're stuck with the person you chose to marry 30. That's discouraging, isn't it?
You love your wife.
Oh, yeah, she knows I do. You heard, she was the loudest laugher on that one. Okay, what does it do? What does discouragement do to you physically? What does discouragement do to you physically? If you are, it can make you sick. What are some other, besides the fact just getting sick, you could, if you're prone to migraines, you might get a migraine, right? What other things?
It can make you mentally and physically sick.
Mentally.
I know this for a fact. I'm saying.
You know, I'm a pretty strong guy, but if I get discouraged, you know, I'm just like, oh, I'll just sit on the couch. I don't want to do anything, right? So it can make you feel weak, both mentally, because you're already attacked mentally. That's what it is. It's a mental state, but it affects you physically. You can get colds. People can get so stressed, they'll get colds. People get so stressed, they'll lose their hair. They get discouraged, right? So being discouraged can also cause physical concerns. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Bible, right? That's why we're here, Bible class. Joseph, Genesis 37 and 39. We all know the story of Joseph, right? Joseph was one of how many sons? 12. You don't have to whisper. 12. Okay, his father loved him and gave him what? A coat of many colors, right. His brothers were what about him and sold him? Jealous, and they sold him into slavery, right? Now we know, because we know the whole story, that was God's plan, right? He was taken to Egypt, eventually became a steward at Potiphar's, one of Pharaoh's officials. Potiphar's wife tried to do what to Joseph? Seduce him, right? All right, so after that, he made it through that, he ran off, right? But she falsely accused him, and he wound up where? Imprisoned, right? Okay, so then we know that he eventually got out and prepared for the famine, made storerooms, and so forth, so on. Now, first, hey, life's good. My dad loves me more than he loves my other siblings. Woo, right? 1 against 12 or 1 against 11? Well, you get your favorite coats taken away, your gift from your favorite dad, right? Well, I guess your only dad. Then, yeah, sorry. Then you're thrown in a pit, and you're probably freaking out. Okay, what are they going to do to me? Oh, they're just teasing, right? Brother jokes. All right, well, then they sell him. Then he becomes pretty much a slave, right? But God looks out for him. So he's starting to move back up. But that would be discouraging over and over and over, something bad, especially in your youth, right? How did Joseph handle that? Look at the picture that I put up there. He was given a lot of lemons, right? You've heard this saying, take lemons and turn them into lemonade. God used Joseph and gave him lemonade, didn't he? Okay, let's take a look at another person. And I'm sorry, so tiny. It looks tiny up there. I guess it's up there. Oh, sorry, that was supposed to be misfortunes, but you can't read misfortunes. The next common cause of discouragement is mistakes. And that's why I have 1 + 1 = 3. Now, in IT, that would be terrible. And if you're balancing your checkbook, that'd be terrible too. although you'd be giving yourself more, but anyway. So let's look at Judas. Judas, what wound up to Judas? What happened to him?
He hung himself.
He hung himself. That was the end result. He killed himself. Oh, it got it. But you guys didn't hear me, right? There, they'll pick that up later. Oh wait, no, it's not even recording the. Okay, so you can't read this. I'll put this up so I can read it. Judas was listed among the 12 apostles, right? He was one of them. That's Matthew 10:1, Mark 3:16 through 19, and Luke 6:12 through 16. Judas was in charge of the money bag for the apostles. What does that mean? What does it mean to be in charge of the money bag? He controlled the finances. He paid for things. If they needed to go get food, he paid for it. But he also did other things with that money bag.
Sure did.
What did he do?
He stole money from it.
Yeah, he helped himself to the money. And
Yeah.
so he was pretty much a thief. Okay? And that's John 12:6. Okay, so we know that Judas betrayed Jesus. For how much? 30 pieces of silver. How much would 30 pieces of silver be worth?
30 pieces.
30 pieces, thank you, of silver. Back then, was that a lot of money, or? Price of a slave. Oh, wow. Okay. I did not know that. So that, usually you're saying denarii, and that's a year's salary. So silver, 30 pieces of silver, okay? And then he betrayed Christ with a kiss, right? Then what happened after he betrayed Christ? Jesus was put on trial, and what happened to Jesus? Well, he was condemned first.
Oh, yeah.
And that is when Judas said, I've done something wrong. And he tried to do what with the 30 pieces of silver? He tried to take it back to the high priest and say, take it back. And how did they treat him when he did that? Awful. They just said, it's not our problem, right? So Judas made a mistake, right? Big one. Someone had to do it. We know that. He made a mistake. He realized that he had made a mistake. How many of us have sinned and realized that we've sinned, and then we ask God to forgive us, we're forgiven? Was he that hopeless? Was Judas that hopeless that he would not have been forgiven? That he had to hang himself on a cross or from a rope? What do you think?
I think he would have been forgiven, but he committed suicide. I don't think, it says you're not going to go to heaven.
Well, I don't, right. What I'm saying is he was so hopeless, going back to the word hopeless, he didn't see any way out. He had put blinders on himself and he tried to give the 30 pieces back, and they said, it's not our problem. Dan?
In his defense, I think he realized he killed the Messiah. And to him, what they believed, the Messiah's gone. Their hope of a king, of a reign here in Jerusalem was over, and it was solely his fault. And he couldn't see himself living for the rest of his life, his entire nation, knowing that he did that.
Yeah, well, definitely. But remember, he's listed as one of the 12. What did the 12 do? They followed Christ. They hung out with him. They saw the miracles that he did. They saw him raise people from the dead. They saw everything that he was doing. They knew he was the real deal. Yet he was so, Penny?
Well, you have to wonder, I mean, he didn't go back to the right people, right? He went to give back the money,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't go to his fellow disciples and say, hey, I just forgot, I need your help. We don't know how they would have responded because we don't have anything like that recorded, but I think part of that lesson
to encourage us and lift us back up, right? So I think that if Judas had done something like that, gone to the apostles and said, hey, I messed up. But here he was stealing out of the money bag. And I don't think it's recorded that the apostles knew that he was doing that, is it? I don't recall it being recorded. So he was doing it underhanded. Nobody knew about it, or at least it's not recorded. Did he? Okay. So bottom line is Judas, we know the end result. He hung himself. He was in desperation. He was totally discouraged. That can happen to us today if we get so discouraged. We might consider those drastic things. The book talks about, when you get depressed, you get discouraged, you turn to alcohol, you turn to drugs, you turn to other things to kind of, I don't know, they do things to your head, I guess. I've never drank, never smoked marijuana or even a cigarette. My dad was a 4-pack a day smoker and stuff, and alcoholic. I never had the desire, so I don't know what these drugs do to you. I guess I've been put under for anesthesia. I just had that with my eye, and I like that because you go to sleep and, but these drugs, you can really get discouraged into that. So I would assume if they had drugs back then, Judas would have been.
I don't drink either, but I mean, they say that so you break through your drugs, it numbs how you're feeling. So if you're depressed, then when you turn to alcohol, you're not going to be depressed anymore because you're not going to feel it.
That is very true. That's exactly why my dad was alcoholic. He had started off, one of the church members said, I drink a little bit of wine to help with my sinuses and stuff. And next thing you know, he's a hidden alcoholic. But anyway, we're going to go back to, you can really get depressed and down into things. Okay, now let's contrast him to someone else in the Bible. Peter. Peter did something bad to Christ too, didn't he? And Christ told him he was going to. What did Peter do? Denied him. Let me jump over to the other one. He denied him 3 times. Trina, I am so sorry. Next time I'll make the slides bigger. She's up here trying to, I can't see that. And maybe white's not a great color. Yeah, he denied him 3 times after he told Christ, I'm not going to deny you. I'm going to be right there with you, standing right by your side. And Jesus told him what? Before something happens, you will have denied me 3 times. The rooster's going to crow, right? So, he denied Christ, but did Peter hang himself? What's the difference between Peter and Judas?
Maybe he had more trust in God. I mean, Judas, he went away from God, but Peter, he stuck to God.
He definitely stuck to God. Dan? Rachel, I'll come back.
I think he was more of a believer. There's people today who come to church and profess faith, just as Judas does or did, and he's a follower of Christ, walk around with him, and people today walk around in the church building or out of the church and say they're this or that. But when the tires hit the road, are you really a true follower?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Judas was not. And we're all going to fail here and there, but it depends on where your heart truly lies.
Rachel?
Yeah, what Jessica was saying, something about trusting the Lord, I was thinking of that verse in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6.
Mm-hmm.
And even verse 7 is, be not wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord and turn away from evil. So you know that discouragement is from Satan, like good,
Absolutely.
good and evil,
Mhm.
It's a lot of the metaphor, I think. And so we have to find a way to get away from that, get ourselves out of that, because it leads down into like a spiral if you just.
Absolutely. And Peter was able to do that. Whereas Judas, he went to the high priest and he said, I don't want anything to do with you. That's your problem. Peter, he immediately wept. Both of them wept, but he immediately wept and realized what he had done, and that what Jesus had told him had come true, right? He did not lose hope like Judas did or had, all right? Peter had courage, all right? He regarded his behavior, but did not, or he regretted his behavior, but it did not destroy him. Rachel.
Well, I was just thinking about that, how the high priest, his reaction to Judas could have been different. And if he had said, you know what, we can't really accept that money back, but we can pray for you and the wrong that you've done. If he had been accepted that way and,
It would have been probably a totally different picture, right?
well, I don't know. I'm
But,
just- yeah.
but we knew they were off the deep end, right? If that's a way of saying it. They weren't where they needed to be. That's why Christ let them have it regularly. Of course, they kept trying to get Christ too. Okay, so let's talk about unintentional discouragement. So I'm going to kind of pick us up, because if I go 20 more minutes, that will be 8 o'clock. Okay? But I've got a lot of stuff to keep going. Okay, so unintentional discouragements. There's 3 types that the book points out. One is insensitivity. Do you know what that means? To be insensitive, yes. Can you give me an example? Anybody give me an example of being insensitive?
When someone like, well, I can't say it right now, but I never mind why.
Oh,
Like if someone is discouraged, maybe you gotta realize you can't just always say, just pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Just pull yourself.
that doesn't help, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't.
If you're so far down in your own, if you got your blinders on, it's going to be hard to be lifted up just with words, right? You might want to say, hey, let's go talk, and try to show.
I have like clinical depression and anxiety that I'm treated for.
Mhm.
And I go to counseling because they help me like realize, they help me stay to the point I need to be before I do something, before I get suicidal or whatever, I like talk myself out of it.
So they teach you coping skills?
Coping skills.
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
I use one of Sydney's words. When she talks to people on the phone, she talks to them about coping skills. So she'll be happy that I use that.
I'm doing something similar, like when she's talking about it, they help me with that too.
That's good. There's all kinds of good counseling services out there. Discouragers, similar to what you were saying, Rachel, they're kind of oblivious. If they just say something, okay, I took care of your need, and then they go on their merry way. Penny?
Sometimes we accidentally make someone feel like they're to blame for what they're, like we can feel, I know I've had people say something, like, well, what did you do to cause that problem? And it's being insensitive, right? It's like, well, maybe I didn't do anything to cause the problem. Or maybe I didn't, I don't need to point.
Yeah, stuff does just happen. It does.
Sometimes you're, what was I saying? Oh, just go on and point.
It's happening a lot. It happened over here with Jessica too. Okay, so you can be, the last thing to discourage a person needs is to be criticized, using sarcasm. How many people have a lot of sarcasm in their homes? That's hard to say. Thank you. It's part of family, right? Okay, intimidation. Hopefully nobody's dealing with this in their families, but to be intimidated by someone. How many have had a boss who, tries to intimidate you to do what they want you to do? When I was, starting out, back when I got $2.25 an hour or something like that, I worked for the city of Orlando. My boss would kind of, push me down to say, hey, you got to do better. Well, I thought I was doing fine. But anyway, he would, what the word here for intimidation, they have browbeating. He didn't browbeat me, but he did bully me a little bit, to push me. Clarence?
Are you a parent?
Definitely, yes.
I'm sure you intimidate your children.
Oh yeah, the look.
So every one of us as parents intimidate away, but hopefully it's a good way.
Yes, yes. What you're talking about is a positive from a negative, I think. From the kids' point of view, no, they're probably saying, no, that's not good. My dad used to have a way of looking at us. We'd be in church messing around, and he'd look at us, and we knew we were in trouble. I'm not going to say when. Hopefully it doesn't for a while. It's encouraging to have that. It is. Or you can negligence. You can neglect people. The picture up here, you can't see it very well. I guess up there you can. You got, I tried to find something that was, where someone definitely felt left out. It's the two girls. They're chit-chatting and carrying on, having a great time, but they're ignoring their friend. And that is neglecting. You can have neglect in a marriage. You can have neglect at work. If you're neglected, that's a way of controlling that person. You're essentially saying, you're not important, go away, right? What is the difference between browbeating and domination? Browbeating and domination. If I'm browbeating you, what am I doing? I said it was bullying.
You're beating somebody down.
Yeah, you're beating them down. It could be verbal. Hopefully it's not physical. But you're beating someone down. Compare that to domination.
I think one is more.
Controlling. Penny?
Browbeating is more passive aggressive. It's not as in your face. It can be more subtle. Whereas I think dominating is, in my mind, is more direct.
The definitions I have, and I just got them off the internet, so you know they're right. Browbeat, to intimidate or disconcert by a stern manager or arrogant speech, to bully someone. Domination is supremacy or preeminence over another. So I would say you could browbeat someone to gain dominance over them. Okay? So those are types of unintentional discouragements. Although to me, if I'm browbeating someone, I'm doing it intentionally. Not me personally, but we'll move on. Okay, there are ways that we can combat. Now we're getting into the positive stuff, right? We've kind of gotten discouraged and dealt with that. The weapons we have available to battle the discouragement is when we get criticized, look for compliments. Try to look to yourself. How can you compliment yourself? Right? Browbeating. How do you combat browbeating? Express belief. Belief in yourself that you can do it.
Pluck the eyebrows.
Pluck the-
At work, I'm a carpenter, the boss, that's easy to do, this and that, and it's like the browbeating. I pull out my hammer and I hand it right.
Yeah, there's always whenever someone's doing something, if you're critical of them, don't be surprised if they say, here's my shoes, or here's the song. Well, songbook, that's going to be a problem for some of the ladies, but here's whatever, you do it then. You planned this activity, instead of being encouraging and saying, hey, this was a great event. Thank you for putting it on, right? Don't lose confidence in yourself. Neglecting. How do you combat being neglected? You acknowledge and appreciate one another. What are some traits of encouragers? What are some traits of an encourager? We're looking at the positive people now. Upbeat. Including, they include people. They want to be inclusive because they're like, hey, I'm going to go have fun. I want you guys to come too. Right? Self-confident. That's really important because that helps them. They have enough courage that they can share with other people, right? Because they are self-sufficient. They're confident in themselves, right? Sensitive to other people. What other traits of an encourager? Penny?
They're grounded in their faith.
Grounded in their faith?
I think as a whole, as a congregation, as a church, broadly, with this whole thing with COVID, I mean, I see the difference from like the people, especially when we were really in the thick of COVID, the people at work and how they handled it and how it was just so discouraging to them. Whereas us as a group, we were able to see because of our faith in God, we have that comfort. So I feel like people who are encouragers, and then hopefully we can take that and encourage others to grow with that, because we have our faith in God and share that faith.
Absolutely. Judy, did you have your hand up? Nope, you just rubbed your nose. Okay. All right. Someone look up Hebrews 3:13 for me. Another person look up 2 Corinthians 13:11. And one other person look up Hebrews 10:25.
Here's some information.
Thank you. Hebrews 3:13. Who has that? This is God talking to us about encouragement, just letting you know.
But exhort one another every day, as long as it is called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin.
Okay, exhort, that's English Standard?
Yes.
Okay, so what's another word for exhort? Encourage one another. Encourage one another. Okay, who's got 2 Corinthians 13:11? And I have English Standard Version in front of me. That's what I use when I'm teaching.
Finally, brothers, good night. Aim for protection, listen to my appeal. Be of one mind, live in peace. Am I reading the right one? Verse 10 says building up, not tearing down.
Oh, I truncated. Can you start with 10? 10 and 11.
2 Corinthians 13:10.
Yes, please.
This is why I write these things when I am absent, and when I come, I do not encourage you in my use of authority. The authority the Lord gave you for building you up, not for tearing you down. Finally, brothers, goodbye. Aim for perfection. Listen to my appeal. Be of one mind and live in peace. And the God of love and peace will be with you.
Okay, American Standard has, finally, brothers, rejoice, aim for restoration. Comfort one another. What version are you reading? Oh. We'll talk about that later. No, I'm just kidding. Let me reread this. Finally, brothers, rejoice, aim for restoration, comfort one another, agree with one another, live in peace, and the God of love and peace will be with you. Okay? Hebrews 10:25. Who has Hebrews 10:25? Go ahead, Betty.
Let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, and forsaking our own assembling together as the habit of some men, but encouraging one another, and all the more in to see the book drawing near.
Yeah, so we as Christians are supposed to encourage one another, lift each other up. And I know it's been mentioned several times tonight, that's exactly what we as Christians, I would assume everybody in here has that same mindset, that we want to encourage our fellow Christians, definitely family members, right? But definitely our church family.
That verse particularly, because we need to be together to do it.
Yes, we definitely need to be together to do it. Through COVID, it was a challenge, but we actually grew during COVID, believe it or not. Okay, why does Satan want people discouraged? Why do you think Satan wants people to be discouraged?
If he wants to lead them away from Christ and the church.
Yeah.
Away.
He wants to put those blinders on you, and then you're not going to look for God's word to comfort you. You're not going to go to a fellow Christian to ask, hey, can I talk to you and share your thoughts, your feelings with them. You're not going to look to be uplifted, and ultimately you may go to the path that Judas took, right? And just throw in the towel and give up.
Discouraged people are more impressionable.
Very much. They're easily to lead around. Okay? And, okay. What weapons are available to battle discouragement? We kind of touched base. Faith in God, right? Christian fellowship. Let's see. We've got fellowship on there. Prayer. If you're feeling down, what's the first thing we should do? Go to God in prayer. That's what he's there. He's there to listen. He wants us to go to him, right? Open his word, because that's him talking back to us directly, right? Okay, how can discouragement be compared to a heart attack? How can discouragement be compared to a heart attack? And I kind of gave you a hint there. Discouragement is the devil's device to blink saints of heart and hope. Compare that statement to a heart attack. Do we have a nurse is in here? What happens when you have a heart attack? Right, you're not getting blood or oxygen, kind of getting choked away. You're getting deprived. You're getting deprived of those vital things to help you live, right? Well, in being discouraged, what are the things that Satan's trying to do? To rob us of our love life, our lifelines, our church members who are our encouragers, right? He's trying to cut off those sources of encouragement from us. That's how you compare it to a heart attack. It's cutting off your blood life. I put it in here. He chokes off your lifeblood, your support, your abilities to deal with the situation. He puts you in a spiral of despair, right? And hopefully someone will pay attention that if you're not here, there's this story about the farmer. You guys have heard this story about the farmer from the pulpit. It's a preacher's basic. Judy's looking at me like she's never heard this. Once I say it, you will. Okay, farmer goes to church. He's there every Sunday. Bible class, he's a dairy farmer. Gets up early, he milks the cows, but he makes it to church, him and his family, right? Does this for years and years and years and years. One day, the farmer doesn't come to church. Do you think that was noticed? Absolutely. What happened? The whole congregation went out to the farm. The tractor flipped over on top of him and it saved his life because the church went and rescued him. Now, I totally messed that up, right? It's not the true Reader's Digest version, but... Oh, you haven't? Oh, well, now you have. Now you know the rest of the story. Anyway, you can get a lot out of that. It's encouraging to know that if you are here, you're going to be missed, right? And that's why those cards are such an encouragement that we've got. You just put a little note. I've gotten a handful of them myself. So when you get those cards, it's uplifting. It's encouraging. Yes?
From the medical standpoint of all of this, I think it is important to recognize that, especially with the smaller little life events, that there is a chemical component that even though somebody would maybe want to, sometimes when you are depressed or hopeless, it's difficult for you to feel like you can pray yourself out. But like you said, we need to be sensitive to other people, and if you realize that somebody is down or depressed, you may be the person that needs to pray for them because they're having trouble themselves.
Absolutely.
And there are things that can help with that, but I think it's important. I think sometimes people just say, oh, well, if you just had more faith, or if you just prayed more, but I feel like as Christians,
Those are just words. If you're in a state of mind,
Some people do, even in the church, I think people do feel like, and maybe not in the Church of Christ necessarily, but I think that is even from the Christian population, feels like people should be able to just get themselves out if they.
you're a Christian, you're tough, go for it, right?
But sometimes we're the ones outside of that person's mind that need to be the ones working to help them because they can't.
Those are very good point. That's good insight. It takes us back to fellowship. It's so key that we feel like we are part of God's family. I mean, that's what the church is. We are a group of individuals that have common goals of getting to heaven, and we're worshiping together and encouraging and fellowshipping with one another, right? So it's so important that we don't allow Satan to give us a heart attack, a discouragement heart attack.
We need to know that even though people are here, that doesn't mean they're receiving the fellowship. We need to be aware that there's this person standing by themselves that's not included, not making.
That is very true. A lot of times, how many people, and I'm guilty of this, how many people have just come in and say, hey, how you doing? Hi, Gail, how you doing? Okay, good, bye. Right? Have you seen people, we get so busy when we're here, we want to go see so-and-so and greet such and do such and such thing, that it's a nicety. We just say, oh, how you doing? Trina, you doing good? Okay, bye. You don't really find out, Trina, how's your day going today? You know, we don't have those conversations, partly because we're only here for an hour, right? And then if you, on Wednesday nights, it's like, it just took me an hour to get here, and it's 8 o'clock, by the way. And now I've just got to do class, turn around, and I got to drive back an hour.
There are a lot of people don't want to ask that because they don't want to get involved.
Yeah, well, we need to work on that. That's a muscle. The heart's a muscle, and we need to strengthen that muscle and encourage one another to do that. I bet you if we were to start sincerely picking 5 or 6 people each Sunday to say, hey, how you doing? And try to have a conversation, it would spread like wildfire, and then all of us would grow from it. Donna?
I say some people are very shy speaking if someone says that. And it's difficult to speak to someone else. So, I mean, over the years, I've overcome a lot of that. But to be included, it's hard to be included if someone's not telling you that.
No, I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, Delber's not like that. Opposites attract, right? I think that's how Penny and I are. I'm more in your face than Penny is, although she holds her own. I mean, she was talking in class. All right, in your book, I'm not going to go over them. I'm going to show them, though, in your book, and then we'll close with the closing prayer. List some things this week that discourage people. Discuss how these situations can be handled, how you would handle them. Let's modify it a little bit. List things that you think are discouraging to people and identify how you would handle them, okay? Pray to God. Praying to God helps in your daily battle against discouraging beliefs and behaviors. So I'm sure all of us have good prayer lives. This week's assignment is to encourage your spouse if you don't have a spouse. Widowed, unmarried, choose a friend as a substitute. Not your dog, not your cat, or your mouse, or whatever you might have. It's got to be human, okay? So those are your homework assignments for this week. And then Paul's going to pick up next week with, what's next week's topic? Possibilities of encouragement. Excellent. So if you'll bow with me, I'll say a prayer and then we'll be dismissed. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you, dear Lord, for this opportunity that we've had to discuss the possibilities of getting discouraged. We thank you, dear Lord, for allowing us to talk about ways of becoming uplifted and how we can battle those situations. Especially, it was uplifting to me to hear the class, everybody say that, hey, you know, we've got our church family. We're going to go to them and talk to them. And that's uplifting. And dear Lord, we pray that you be with each and every one of us as we go our separate ways. Help us come back, if it's your will, on Sunday to worship you. It's through Jesus' loving name we pray. Amen.